Hello, welcome back to the September Shift Challenge. If you did not watch the kickoff video, I will have that linked in the description as well as the playlist. This September, we're doing the September Shift Challenge, which is all about kind of transitioning, like if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, from summer into the last 4 months of the year to really finish strong. And this video in particular, it's about how to stay motivated, because if you've been doing this challenge for a couple days, you've probably realized, like, okay, I've got like some good momentum. The first 2 days I was really excited, and then okay, like, how long do I have to do this for? I'm feeling like I don't know if I can sustain this for very long. So I want to reiterate a paradox that I talked about in the first video, which is pursuing this sticky goal that won't go away, just keeps nudging at you year after year. It's monumentally important that you do it. You feel like you're made to do this thing, so it's so important. And paradoxically, the actual work that you set off to do right now is inconsequential. All these pieces of work added up together change you as a person, and it becomes monumentally important to feel like you did what you were made to do. But the actual work, I've posted hundreds of videos, the actual specific videos that I made, completely inconsequential. So don't get too caught up in the perfectionism or the pressure. And in fact, that is the best way to get unmotivated, is getting stuck in this perfectionistic trap. Now, when you're doing something very important, there's bound to feel a certain pressure attached to it. There's expectations. I want my work to be good. You start seeing the work and you start seeing how it's falling short of your expectations, and you just see, sometimes it just feels like it's so exaggerated, this gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that creates a lot of resistance. Now, I kind of hesitantly, partially recommend this book, The War of Art. There are some things in here that I would call problematic. There's some health things in here that they probably shouldn't have said, the Hitler quote, it's quite controversial. So anyways, I don't with my full chest recommend this, but with reservations, I do recommend this for the concept of resistance. The concept of resistance in this book is something that I come back to all the time. And they're very short chapters. You can just read, some of them are just a page. And even if before you sat down to create, you just read one page of this, I think there's so much about resistance when you're doing any sort of creative thing. And I do recommend that book generally for the philosophy of it. But I also have specific strategies for overcoming resistance and maintaining motivation. So one of the principles that I believe is that the hardest part of getting things done is getting started. So for example, if you think of this hill, it's kind of you're pushing this boulder up a hill, and at some point it gets easier and it tips and it'll just roll down by itself. In the case of a lot of tasks, and especially creative tasks, it's like rolling the boulder up the hill is just the first 5%. It's just the getting started. Getting started is all rolling that thing up the hill. Once you get started and you've done the first 5% of the task, then it just kind of goes down and it takes care of itself. So this is where I came up with what I call the preemptive momentum principle. Usually in any sort of weekly routine, like for example, I film on Tuesdays. That for me is the biggest lift. There's the most resistance on Tuesdays when I need to film. So especially when I'm preparing for a film day, I will use the preemptive momentum principle, which means I will roll the boulder up the hill the night before so that the next day it just goes down. So what I mean by that is get started the night before. So set up the camera, set up the lights, get everything absolutely ready so that 5% of getting started is already done. So the next day when you show up, you can just go right into it. So the night before I try to make all decisions, I get the environment clean and tidy. I set up everything. And that will make it so much easier to get started. So I would just think, whatever your task is that you need to do tomorrow, what's the first 5% of it? Maybe if I need to write, it's like I sit down, I open up the laptop, I open the Google Doc where I write, and I start writing the first paragraph. I write 5 sentences maybe, and get started. And then the next day when you wake up, you're already started, you're already in motion. It doesn't feel so difficult, because so much of the hassle of getting started is just the nebulous confusion of what exactly is this gonna be? Maybe I haven't quite made all those decisions. So the night before, you make all the decisions. This is the direction we're going. This is how I'm gonna do it. And then you just show up. Because you want to avoid decision fatigue. Over time, throughout the day, we make hundreds of decisions and it just gets fatiguing. So if you can make all of those the night before, so you just show up, it makes it so much easier. I heard a quote, I believe it was Hemingway, I'll verify in editing, but it was a famous author who said, I always stop writing mid-sentence. Because your brain kind of wants to complete it then. It's the Ovseankina effect. If you see a progress bar at 99%, you want that final bit to be filled in. It's like, it's not satisfying to not have it filled in. Like if you were to stop mid-sentence, it's like, oh, it's not satisfying. I want it to be complete. So you're kind of tricking yourself into completing things. Conversely, if you just see an empty progress bar, you're like, ooh, that's a lot. And when you're starting from scratch, that's kind of how it feels. And so by getting started, it's like you fill that progress bar already most of the way. And then to finish it, you just got to get going a little bit. So it's nice. At night, you just say to yourself, all I have to do is get started. All I have to do is 5%. And then the next day, when you actually show up, then you say, oh, I already started this. I just got to finish that last little part. So result-wise and quantity-wise, you're only doing like the first 5% the night before, but emotionally, it feels like you did 95% of it the night before. The other concept is doing everything but. So a few months ago, we did a challenge called the Everything But Challenge. And that came from a quote in the Creative Act that I really liked. And it's in the first page, and it is, the object isn't to make art, it's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. And so in the case of this September shift that we're doing, the object isn't to will yourself to get this goal done, but it's to create the conditions that make it inevitable. So thinking about when I feel inspired and alive making YouTube videos, what conditions was I creating? Well, I was reading every night, and that made me really inspired. The house was clean, and so it felt easier to get started on work. There's less environmental cluttering up the mental space. I was going to bed early enough. I wasn't staying up so late, and I was waking up early enough to feel like I had a lot of time to get things done. I had an accountability partner. We were going to a coffee shop every morning together. So you can kind of go through and think, what circumstantial things in the past has worked for you that make it inevitable? You know, when I'm reading so much and filling myself with inspiring material, it becomes inevitable that I'll want to share it. When I learn, it becomes inevitable that I want to teach. And conversely, when I don't fill that well with ideas, I think it was this book, Big Magic, that talked about this metaphor of ideas being like fish. Like, it's like you have this idea pond and all the ideas are fish. And it's like you're feeling when you read and you are inspired creatively. I especially like reading because it's a slow medium, so you can be going back and forth to thinking about what was there, and then you think your interpretation, it makes you think of this, and you can kind of go back and forth faster than video, or easier than video. And when you don't fill that pond with idea fish, metaphorically, then when I would go to film a video, it's like, oh, fishing, and it's like, well, I've used them all up because I wasn't replenishing. So no wonder the inspiration is running dry. So it's like a well that you need to continue to fill. So I recommend all three of these books, especially for creative motivation, for motivation to continue. I recommend reading books like this to motivate you to continue creating and on the importance of creating, and also books about the thing itself that you're creating. So in my case, I make a lot of personal development content for YouTube. So reading personal development books in addition to creating is something that fills my idea well personally. But also you can cross-contextually get ideas from different genres as well. So there's gonna be, as you embark on this journey, there's gonna be a lot of resistance. And that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. I think some people have the belief like, if I was made to do this, it would be easier. Or this would be really easy. If I was naturally talented at this, it'd be easy. And so I need to be naturally talented at this. And if I'm not naturally talented at it, I just shouldn't do it. And I just firmly am adamantly against the belief that we need to only do things that we're talented at, because especially when we evaluate ourselves, we're going to come up lacking a lot of times if we're our own worst critics. And so there are going to be a lot of days that you feel like not doing it, and that is not a sign that you should stop. There's going to be a lot of days where you hate your work, you hate the final product, and you wish it was better, and that is not a sign to stop. It's not a sign that you weren't made to do it. There's an incredible book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And something that I've kind of taken from that book is that if you have a fixed mindset, it means that you think your ability is here and it cannot change. It's just flatlining. So as long as people with a fixed mindset succeed, they feel like, okay, great, this is the level I'm at, I'm talented, I'm good. And so you can't really spot someone with a fixed mindset when things are going well for them. But as soon as they fail, they feel like that's a ceiling I've hit. My ability is fixed, I hit the ceiling, and I can never get better than that. And so failure becomes a value judgment. It tells someone, this is the end of my limit, this is my ceiling, I can't get better at this, I'm not naturally gifted at singing, I'm not naturally gifted at painting, this is the value judgment and I'm not made to do it. They create future statements, it wasn't meant to be, I'm not made to do this. Conversely, someone with a growth mindset, they see themselves as having the ability to go up, to go down, to flatline. I mean, they are malleable and changeable. They don't see themselves as fixed. And so when you have one data point of failure, let's say, you cannot make a slope of a line from one point. You need 2 points to determine what the slope of that line is. And so when they have one instance of failure, one video doesn't do well, they have one art piece they don't like, they don't say, I'm never going to be able to do that, or the future's always going to be like that. They say, you know what, that's one data point, and I can always go up. I can always work harder to go up. And so people with a growth mindset start focusing more on verbs instead of value, like, oh, it's my value, I'm not meant to do this. They start focusing on verbs. This is what I can do. I can film more. Okay, you know, I didn't like this about it, but I did like that part about it, and I can change that. And there's a big difference between people with a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset do not like data and feedback, especially that is negative, because to them that determines their value. So they shrink back from feedback. So if you have a video, it doesn't do well, it gets 2 views or something, they shrink back from it and say, I guess I wasn't made to do it. And they don't like to be confronted with metrics that aren't favorable in their direction. Now, no one likes metrics that aren't favorable in their direction, but someone with a growth mindset says, let me look at those metrics. Okay, I'm just going to evaluate it objectively. This doesn't determine my value. But what are the things that I did well, that I could work on? Okay, what's good, what's bad? And it's more constructive criticism. It's criticism that like the word construct is like to construct a building, to build someone up. So taking the criticism, filtering it, and using it to construct a better future, versus someone with a fixed mindset only sees criticism as a way to destruct the person, to break them down. It becomes very personal. And so there has to be a way, as you are working on this sticky goal, that you don't attach your value to it, that you're able to separate yourself from it and say, you know what, this video didn't do well, but that's not a sign of value on me as a person. And one thing you can think about is just think about if you were to have, I'll just keep using this video example because I'm familiar with it, but say you show up to the analytics and you see that a video didn't do well. If you have a fixed mindset, you start saying to yourself, I just can't do it. I'll never be able to do it. I knew it wasn't going to go well. I knew it was going to be like this. And you start saying things to yourself. And if you put yourself with me in that headspace, you can just feel yourself constricting, contracting like this. But instead, if you were to say to yourself, okay, it got 2 views. Okay, that's because I'm a beginner at this. That's completely normal. I'm learning. I'm a beginner. That's completely normal. I'm a student. I'm meant to put things out there and kind of fumble around. And that's what learning is. It's not a complete uphill growth. It's messy, and everyone's meant to be messy. And, you know, you go up and you go down, you go up and you go down, and things get better and they get worse, and it's all chaotic. And, you know, things iron out and you become a better person. And you can just, I don't know if you could feel, if you put yourself in that headspace, you just feel yourself expand. And that feeling, if you put yourself in that feeling, that's proof that you can change your mindset. Because just by talking to ourselves differently, you could feel the difference in the contracting versus the opening up. So if you feel like you don't believe in yourself, or you feel like you're insecure, it's possible to change your mindset. And I've started to see discomfort as the reward in and of itself. Sometimes we see like, okay, there's this messy process, and at some point there'll be this amazing result. And we kind of see them as distinctly different from each other. But it was that messy process that yielded to that result that makes them kind of one and the same. And so now I don't think of things as like, oh, this is hard, it means I'm not meant to do this, but I think of it as, this is hard, that means it's growing me. That means I'm stretching. That means I'm going beyond my comfort zone. And yeah, I could sit there. I used to be a math teacher, and I would tell students like, yeah, we could sit here and do 2 + 2 all day, and you could get it right every time, and you would feel good about yourself. Okay, 2 + 2 is 4, 2 + 2 is 4. And for people with a fixed mindset, they like that type of thing because it gives them feedback. I'm good at something. But we could do more difficult math problems, and you would become the better, more knowledgeable person that would stretch you. It would just feel more difficult in the meantime. It would feel more discomfort. So I've started to associate feeling discomfort as I'm growing and becoming a better person. And one thing I wanted to say, I love this quote, that bad habits feel good before and good habits feel good after. And it's all just this dopamine, like pleasure, pain things, but the best things in life feel difficult to get into, like, I don't know. So it's normal that maybe you don't want to sit down, do the thing, you don't want to film, but you'll feel so much better after. That's my experience all the time. And most things are very learnable. Like even things like I think people are like, oh, well, you can either sing or you can't. I can't catch a tune in a bucket or whatever. Singing is one that is very Math, singing, I mean, there's lots of things that are very, just culturally very entrenched in a fixed mindset. But singing is one that when you talk to most people who actually have done any amount of singing lessons, the people that I talk to who've done singing lessons, coaches, I mean, they all say it's just a muscle that you build. Yeah, some people might naturally have an easier baseline than other people, but most people in the singing profession are on the side of you can grow way into it. And I think sometimes the things that you struggle with that you can end up being a better teacher at. If you're naturally good at something and you never struggled with anything, you were just born perfect at something, you can't teach people because you don't know what the hang-ups are. You never experienced what the hang-ups were. But if you experience the hang-ups and I tried this, and that didn't work, and I tried this, and I tried this, and tried this, and then something works, you can intimately speak to the problems that other people have. I got kind of rambly at some points. But all that to say, keep up the motivation. Thank you for joining the September Shift Challenge. The next video is going to be reevaluating our plan because some parts of the plan that we outlined for ourselves probably aren't working. Parts worked, parts didn't work. Results were less than we wanted. Maybe we fell off. Maybe shame is starting to kick in. I'll do a video about we don't want shame to kick in. If you fell off, it's not a value judgment. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means it's difficult and you're trying something new. So thank you so much for watching. I will have the playlist linked in the description for the rest of these September Shift videos. I do have coaching. I sell a potential planner and the potential journal if you are interested. And like I said earlier, I just got done filming. I feel great. Did not want to get into it at all, but now I feel great. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.